The most dangerous thing in the world isn't violence or greed, it's belief. Because belief doesn't need proof, it doesn't need truth. It only needs a voice that sounds certain enough. In stadiums across the world, tens of thousands of people once stood and cheered for a woman they believed would make them rich. They waved flags from countries they'd never visited. They screamed promises of wealth into microphones. They genuinely believed they were witnessing the future of money. They were catastrophically wrong. Because behind the flashing lights, behind the speeches delivered in designer gowns, behind the champagne and the luxury cars, there was nothing. No revolutionary technology, no blockchain, no innovation whatsoever. Only an elaborate, breathtaking lie. This is the story of OneCoin, the biggest cryptocurrency scam in history. A fraud so massive it makes Bernie Madoff look like an amateur. A deception so sophisticated it fooled governments, banks, and millions of ordinary people across 6 continents. And at the center of it all was a woman who called herself the Crypto Queen. Her name was Ruja Ignatova. And in October 2017, she boarded a flight from Sofia to Athens and was never seen again. The world before the scam. To understand how OneCoin happened, you need to understand the moment it was born into. The year is 2013. Bitcoin has just crossed $1,000 for the first time. The entire world is waking up to the idea that maybe, just maybe, cryptocurrency is real. People who bought Bitcoin for pennies in 2010 are now millionaires. Early adopters are retiring in their 30s. Stories are spreading like wildfire about regular people who got rich simply by believing in something new. And where there's a gold rush, there are con artists selling fake shovels. But here's the thing. Most scams are obvious. Most fraudsters are sloppy. They get greedy, they make mistakes, they get caught quickly. Ruja Ignatova was different. She wasn't some small-time hustler working out of a basement. She had a doctorate in private international law from the University of Oxford. She spoke 5 languages fluently. She'd worked for McKinsey, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world. She was sophisticated, she was charismatic, and she understood something crucial that most scammers don't. People don't invest in technology. They invest in confidence. And Ruja had confidence in abundance, the woman who would be queen. Ruja Ignatova was born in 1980 in Rus, Bulgaria, during the final years of communist rule. Her family wasn't wealthy, but they were educated. Her father was an engineer. Her mother worked in administration. When Ruja was 10 years old, her family moved to Germany. She grew up in Schramberg, a small town in the Black Forest. She was brilliant in school, top of her class, driven. She studied law at the University of Constance, then earned a doctorate from Oxford. She wrote her thesis on private international law, a dense and technical subject that required serious intellectual firepower. After Oxford, she worked briefly for McKinsey in Bulgaria. Then she moved into finance. She joined a company called Bitcoin, an early cryptocurrency venture that ultimately failed. But Ruja learned something important from Bitcoin. She learned that people were desperate to believe in the next Bitcoin. And she learned that if you packaged something correctly, if you made it feel exclusive and urgent, people would invest without asking too many questions. So in 2014, she launched OneCoin. And from the very beginning, it was designed to deceive. The launch, selling a dream. OneCoin was officially launched in Sofia, Bulgaria in late 2014. The pitch was simple and seductive. Bitcoin was flawed, Ruja explained. It was too slow, too volatile, too transparent. Anyone could see every transaction on the blockchain, which meant Bitcoin wasn't truly private. OneCoin, she promised, would fix all of that. It would be faster, more secure, more private. And most importantly, it would make early investors staggeringly rich. But there was a catch. You couldn't just buy OneCoin like you could buy Bitcoin. You had to purchase educational packages first. These packages ranged from a few hundred euros to over 100,000 euros. The packages included online courses about cryptocurrency, trading, and finance. But the real hook was that each package came with tokens, and those tokens could be used to mine OneCoin on the company's private network. Notice the brilliance of the structure. By selling education packages instead of coins directly, OneCoin avoided being classified as a security in most countries. It gave the scam a veneer of legitimacy, and it meant that people weren't just buying coins, they were buying into a system Ruja controlled entirely. Because here's the truth. There was no blockchain. There was no decentralized network. There was no mining in any real sense. OneCoin's database was private, it was centralized, and it was completely fake. The numbers people saw in their accounts, those were just numbers on a screen. Ruja and her team could change them whenever they wanted. The price of OneCoin wasn't determined by the market. It was decided by Ruja, and she always made the price go up. Always. Let's break down exactly how OneCoin operated, because this wasn't a simple Ponzi scheme. It was something far more sophisticated. Step 1, recruitment. OneCoin used multi-level marketing. If you recruited someone, you earned a commission. If the person you recruited then recruited someone else, you earned a smaller commission from that too, and so on. This created a pyramid structure where the people at the top made enormous amounts of money, not from OneCoin going up in value, but from recruiting new victims. Step 2, the packages. People bought education packages at different levels. The starter package cost around 100 euros. The tycoon trader package cost over 100,000 euros. The more you spent, the more tokens you received. Step 3, the mining. Once you had tokens, you could exchange them for OneCoin. The company claimed that OneCoin was being mined on powerful servers using cutting-edge blockchain technology. But in reality, the coins were just being invented. The company simply credited your account with whatever number they felt like. Step 4, the price manipulation. Every few months, Ruja would announce a new price for OneCoin, and it was always higher than before. In 2014, OneCoin was worth around 50 cents. By 2016, Ruja claimed it was worth nearly 30 euros per coin. People watched their accounts grow. On paper, they were getting rich. But there was one small problem. You couldn't actually sell your coins. OneCoin had its own internal exchange called XCoinX, but the exchange was constantly restricted. There were withdrawal limits. There were verification delays. There were maintenance windows that lasted for months. Ruja always had an excuse. The exchange was being upgraded. Regulators were reviewing the system. Security protocols were being improved. In reality, the exchange barely functioned because there was no real market. If everyone tried to sell at once, the entire illusion would collapse. So Ruja kept people believing. She kept them hopeful. She kept them invested. And most importantly, she kept them recruiting. The events. Spectacle is strategy. OneCoin didn't just rely on technology or marketing, it relied on spectacle. Ruja understood that people don't just want to invest, they want to feel like they're part of something bigger. They want community, they want validation, they want to believe they're special. So OneCoin held massive events: London, Macau, Dubai, Bangkok, Lisbon, Hong Kong. These weren't small seminars in hotel conference rooms. These were arena-sized productions. Thousands of people packed into stadiums. Professional lighting, live music, countdown timers on massive screens, and at the center of it all was Ruja. She would walk onto the stage in a floor-length gown, usually red or black, surrounded by bodyguards. The crowd would erupt. People would scream. Some would cry. She spoke with absolute authority. She didn't read from notes. She commanded the room like a general addressing an army. She told them they were pioneers. She told them they were early. She told them that the world didn't understand OneCoin yet, but soon everyone would. And the crowd believed her because she looked successful. She acted successful. She had the degrees, the background, the confidence. Why would someone with a doctorate from Oxford risk everything on a scam? That's what people thought. And that's exactly what Ruja wanted them to think. The believers. Who fell for OneCoin? It's easy to look back now and ask, how could anyone believe this? But the truth is, the victims weren't stupid. They weren't greedy. Most of them were ordinary people trying to build a better life. OneCoin spread fastest in places where economic opportunity was scarce, places where people were desperate for a way out. In Uganda, a teacher named Jane invested her entire savings. She believed OneCoin would pay for her children's education. In Ecuador, a farmer sold part of his land. He thought OneCoin would secure his family's future. In Germany, a nurse emptied her retirement account. She trusted Ruja because Ruja was educated, polished, convincing. These weren't people chasing Lamborghinis. They were chasing stability. They were chasing hope. And OneCoin gave them that hope, until it didn't. There were also the recruiters, the people at the top of the pyramid who made real money. Some of them earned hundreds of thousands of euros in commissions. These people became evangelists. They hosted their own events. They posted constantly on social media. They attacked anyone who questioned OneCoin. If you criticized OneCoin, you were a hater. You were jealous. You didn't understand the future. This wasn't just a financial scam. It was a cult. And cults don't break easily. The warnings. When the cracks appeared. By 2015, red flags were everywhere. Cryptocurrency experts examined OneCoin's claims and found them nonsensical. There was no public blockchain, no way to verify transactions, no independent audits. A Finnish IT expert named Björn Björka wrote a detailed analysis proving that OneCoin's blockchain was fake. He showed that the transaction data OneCoin published was fabricated. Journalists started investigating. The Times of London, the BBC, Financial Times, they all published exposés. But OneCoin's response was always the same. They called the journalists liars. They threatened lawsuits. They told their members to ignore the media. And it worked for a while. Then governments started paying attention. In 2016, Italy's financial regulator issued a warning. Hungary followed, then India, then China. Banks began closing OneCoin-related accounts. Payment processors refused to work with them. But instead of shutting down, OneCoin adapted. They moved operations to different countries. They changed company names. They used cryptocurrency exchanges and money services businesses to move funds. Ruja stayed one step ahead, always moving, always talking, always promising. But behind the scenes, something was happening. The authorities were closing in. In 2016, the FBI opened an investigation into OneCoin. They weren't just looking at fraud. They were looking at money laundering on a massive scale. Investigators estimate that OneCoin took in over $4 billion. But some believe the real number is closer to $15 billion. Where did the money go? Some of it went into Ruja's personal accounts. She bought penthouses in London and Sofia. She purchased a yacht. She funded a lavish lifestyle that included private jets, designer clothes, and expensive jewelry. But most of the money disappeared into a labyrinth of shell companies, offshore accounts, and legal entities spread across dozens of countries. Money flowed through the British Virgin Islands, through Dubai, through the Cayman Islands, through Luxembourg. It was laundered through real estate deals, art purchases, and gold transactions. And tracking it all was nearly impossible. Meanwhile, the FBI was building a case. They had cooperating witnesses. They had financial records. They were ready to move. But they needed to arrest Ruja, and that's when she vanished. On October 25th, 2017, Ruja Ignatova boarded Ryanair Flight 705 from Sofia, Bulgaria to Athens, Greece. Surveillance footage shows her walking through Sofia Airport. She's wearing sunglasses, carrying a small bag. She looks calm. She boarded the plane, and then she disappeared. She never boarded a return flight. She never showed up at any known address. She never made another public appearance. Her boyfriend, a German man named Frank Schneider, was later arrested. He was a former intelligence officer who allegedly helped Ruja evade law enforcement. But even he couldn't say where she went. Some believe she had advance warning that the FBI was coming, that someone tipped her off. Others believe she had an exit plan all along. That she always knew OneCoin would eventually collapse. Either way, she was gone, and the scam continued without her. Konstantin takes over. After Ruja disappeared, her brother Konstantin Ignatov took over OneCoin's operations. Konstantin was younger, less charismatic, and far less competent. He tried to keep the scam running, but it was falling apart. In March 2019, Konstantin was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport. The FBI had been tracking him. He was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. And then, he did something Ruja never would have done. He cooperated. Konstantin pleaded guilty. He admitted that OneCoin was a fraud. He testified that there was no blockchain, no real cryptocurrency, and no legitimate business. He confirmed what investigators already knew. It was all fake. But Konstantin didn't know where Ruja was. Nobody did. Where is Ruja Ignatova? In 2022, the FBI added Ruja Ignatova to its 10 most wanted list. She's one of only a handful of women ever to appear on that list. Interpol issued a red notice. Europol launched investigations. Rewards were offered, but nothing. No confirmed sightings, no credible leads, no arrests. So where is she? Theory 1, she's dead. Some investigators believe Ruja was killed. Organized crime groups don't like loose ends. If Ruja took money that belonged to dangerous people, they might have eliminated her. There are rumors that her body is buried somewhere in Eastern Europe, but no evidence has ever surfaced. Theory 2, she's in Russia. Russia doesn't extradite its citizens to Western countries. If Ruja obtained Russian citizenship or protection, she could be living there under a new identity. Some believe she's in Moscow. Others think she's in a smaller city, living quietly, staying offline. Theory 3, she's had plastic surgery. With billions of dollars in connections to former intelligence operatives, Ruja could have changed her appearance entirely. New face, new identity, new life. She could be anywhere. Theory 4, she's being protected. Some believe Ruja is under the protection of powerful individuals or organizations who profited from OneCoin. People who don't want her to testify. People who want her silent. The truth, no one knows. The victims, left with nothing. While Ruja enjoys her freedom wherever she is, millions of people are left with nothing. They can't access their OneCoin accounts. The company is defunct. The money is gone. Most victims never reported their losses. They were too ashamed, too embarrassed, too afraid of being judged. Some lost everything: their savings, their homes, their dignity. Support groups formed online. People shared their stories. They tried to warn others, but the damage was done. And here's the cruelest part: some victims still believe. Even now, years later, there are people who think OneCoin will come back, that Ruja will return, that their coins will be worth something. They can't let go of the dream, because letting go means admitting they were fooled, and that's too painful. Why OneCoin worked? OneCoin succeeded because it understood human psychology better than most scams. It didn't just promise money. It promised belonging. It promised status. It promised revenge against a system that had left people behind. Ruja told people they were early. They were smart. They were visionaries. And people wanted to believe that about themselves. OneCoin also exploited trust. People recruited their friends, their family, their neighbors. When your brother tells you about an investment, you trust him. When your best friend shows you her account balance, you believe her. OneCoin turned victims into recruiters, and recruiters into believers. It was a perfect machine of deception. The legacy. OneCoin changed the way regulators look at cryptocurrency scams. It exposed weaknesses in financial oversight. It showed how easy it is to move billions of dollars across borders. It proved that confidence and charisma can be more valuable than actual technology. And it left a scar on the cryptocurrency industry. Because now when someone mentions crypto, people think of scams. They think of OneCoin. They think of Ruja. The damage lingers, the silence remains. It's been over 7 years since Ruja Ignatova disappeared. 7 years without a confirmed sighting. 7 years without an arrest. 7 years without answers. Somewhere in the world, she might be living under a new name. Maybe she's in a penthouse in Moscow. Maybe she's in a villa in the Middle East. Maybe she's on a beach in Southeast Asia. Or maybe she's dead, buried in an unmarked grave. Another casualty of the criminal world she helped create. We may never know, but the victims remember. The empty bank accounts remember. The broken families remember. This was OneCoin, a $4 billion lie, a woman who called herself a queen, and a disappearance that remains unsolved. If you want more stories about crimes that end in silence, subscribe to The Silent Files. Because some criminals don't go to prison, they vanish.